Welcome to Bluechip Dialogues. I'm Garett Jones, your host. I'm the chief economist at Bluechip. We're a stablecoin rating agency. We rate stablecoins for their economic safety. We give letter grades from A plus through F. We've given no A pluses, but plenty of Fs. Our guest today is Dave Taylor, co-founder of Etherfuse. Etherfuse is best known as the creator of a Mexican stablecoin, one that is peso-backed. It is actually currently set up as a form of a bond with yield. And he's creating a new product, and he's also innovating elsewhere in the world of non-dollar denominated stablecoins. Please, Dave Taylor, tell us a little bit about what you at Etherfuse are up to.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say Etherfuse is focused on the problems that the rest of the world's not currently trying to solve. This space, there's a lot of stable coins, a lot of people using the dollar as rails into the rest of the world, but the end destinations where people need to also be able to operate on the blockchain have been overlooked. And so what Etherfuse tries to do is to try to go to different countries around the world and issue a sovereign debt asset that can be used to help facilitate many things on the blockchain, like FX or remittance payments. So Etherfuse's main mission is to create an API or programmatic access into sovereign debt around the country throughout the world, in every country throughout the world. And we do that by issuing a short-term treasury on chain as a reward-bearing token that issues native real yield that is provided by the national bank or the Federal Reserve of that country.
And tell us a little bit more about what it means to actually issue this debt yourselves, in a sense. How closely are you working with the governments in this country? Do they recognize this as their product distinctly separate from their own traditional treasuries, or is it basically a twin? Sort of, what's about the legal and the software status of this?
Yeah, so it is not issued directly on chain. These are like an RWA classified. They don't. We've gone through the regulatory process through a few countries. We haven't asked for like direct access for many reasons. I mean, I could get into that's quite complicated from a regulatory standpoint. It pretty much would eliminate our ability to access DeFi like we access now. So one of the unique characteristics of our assets is secondary markets are available. So you can get access to these things, not through us, but through DeFi protocols and other things like that. So the regulatory status is different and it's unique to each country. So we have no action letters in some, like in Mexico, where we've gone through the work with the CNBV to ask them to be able to do this. And they've given us guidance on how they view it legally, which has enabled us to issue these things through, I would say, the comfort of knowing how they think about it. So in Mexico, the guidance we got back was that these are not securities, therefore they're not going to be regulated under their CNBV or SEC, and so we asked for further interpretations on how they're viewed and what we need to do to issue those. In other places, they are recognized as not securities, but as assets that the collateral is custodied in that country. So the answer is very complex. There's not a simple answer, and in each case, it's unique and different. But for the most part, we issue it as a off-chain collateralized asset.
Now, it's the Mexican case I'm particularly interested in because you basically started very early on and worked closely with Mexican regulators. A lot of people can read about the story has been told online many times. Give us sort of the potted history of what it was like to work with Mexican regulators to do something basically ahead of the game, ahead of the curve of everybody else. What were they like to work with? What were the bumps along the road? And when did you know, like, oh, this actually is going to work?
I think like, especially looking back now, so I started a few startups, but before this, I started them with a partner who was a successful entrepreneur. This was the first one I started on my own. And so I caveat that with, there's no way I would ever do this again. It was such a risk back then. And the process, so we always had like, I think, hope that things would work out, but it was such a moonshot that, hey, we could go to Mexico and they'll probably say yes. So the hypothesis we had back then was the US is not going to let us do this back then. And so where could we go where the incentives are, the need to bridge people to the blockchain? And and do things like this. So um, we determined that that would be Mexico first, and so we went to Mexico. We went through the regulatory process, and it was very difficult because I think we chose the final boss of bureaucracy. So
Okay.
it is very bureaucratic. There's not a lot. I think there's globally there's not a large amount of trust from global institutions that if they go there and ask the CNBV or the SEC for guidance that they'll get it. And so it was a good and bad choice in the sense that it was very long and a hard process, but now it's kind of a good choice because it's really our moat, and a lot of people are unwilling to invest the 3 to 5 years that it would take for them to even get an answer, yes or no. So the process fundamentally was we entered into this project with the CMBV under this model called the FinTech law, and it models a lot of different sandboxes around the world. Like the UK is one of the most famous, where you go and you say, I have this new idea. I think you bring a lot of benefit to Mexico. And they'll say, hey, we don't have any precedent for this. So if they let you in, then you become this monopoly for 5 to however long till they can understand how to regulate it. And if they don't say yes, then they're saying this isn't regulated by us. So that's how we did it. The outcome for us was better than we expected in the sense that they said, we don't think that this is a security and therefore isn't regulated by us. So that gave us a lot of um, liberal ground to do things that would be harder if they would have said it was a security, like secondary markets and retail and things like that, which we have. But it also makes it harder to scale. And what do I mean by that is people don't like taking risks. Banks don't like taking risks. And so when we have a lot of partnerships coming up in the next 6 months, we've been working with them for 2+ years, some of the biggest banks in Mexico. The reason it's taken so long is because the no action letter takes time to build trust and to overcome. Whereas
Hmm.
if the SEC of Mexico would have said, hey, yes, this thing is okay, and this is how, here's a letter, it would have gone a lot quicker. And so in other jurisdictions, we really seek to get an official like declaration of what this asset is, just because it helps you scale quicker. So there's a lot of words and a lot of
No, no,
different
no.
things.
So what you have is a no action letter. That is the key document you got early on, and that means that they're basically have put you're on some sort of official pause mode, right? From further regulatory scrutiny from them
Yeah, as a security, yes.
as
And
a
so,
security. And is
so
their definition of security a lot like the SEC's?
no, no. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be able to help you
Sure,
do
sure.
it. Like our
Just wanted to
our
help the audience there. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, our
that helps
our
enough. Yeah.
position the whole time was that these are securities, and
Uh
so we
huh.
should be regulated. And so when they told us
Huh.
they're not, we've had to assume things. So we've actually have like 8 different interpretations that we've gone back and forth to get more clarity.
Hmm.
So we know what they are now and how they look at them, but they're kind of like this unique independent thing that's regulated through a bunch of different interpretation letters from the Mexican government between us.
So the bad news is that the Mexican bureaucratic system and regulatory system is as difficult to deal with as a lot of people say. And the good news is the Mexican bureaucratic and regulatory system is as difficult to deal with as people say, because as
Yeah,
you said, it gives you a moat. You've paid the price.
yeah, we've paid the price. We're confident. We have a history of doing the right thing, and we're protected in that sense. And if you look at
Mm-hmm.
for governments across the world, I think they could see the impact. If you looked at the difference between Brazil and Mexico, and how the economy in Mexico around Brazil has just taken off, how
Mm-hmm.
it's sparked all these different companies competing in the space, that's not happened in Mexico, and it's
Yeah.
purely because the law is unclear, so people feel uncomfortable. Now, for us now, that's a good thing, but for everyone else, it's not necessarily a good thing.
I mean, I think for a lot of the audience, that's going to really pay off to hear that Brazil really is better than Mexico when it comes to regulatory approaches to crypto. That it's not
Yeah.
just social media hype. This is for real.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, people know how to build companies in Brazil and how it works, and it's pretty awesome. I'm super happy that they're doing it. I'm also happy where our company is in Mexico too. So, but it's definitely a better product for the world when they do provide clarity.
And I teach institutional economics. We care about economic institutions here at George Mason, where I'm a professor. So, if you were given advice for someone for how they were going to dive into the Mexican bureaucratic system, what is it one needs? Is it about native language fluency? Is it about someone that understands the legal system? Is it just a lot of waiting?
Yeah.
Is there any sort of secret sauce where you'd say like this, these are three things you really need to deal with the Mexican regulatory system?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to enter, well, timing is going to matter if you're a startup. So are you way ahead of the technological curve? So I think entering Mexico now for a stablecoin company is not like the best idea because institutions are now. So if you just want to enter in a new regulatory space, you need a lot of money and a lot of capital. Luckily, we were small and we survived. That we were two people for like 2 years, a little naive in our approach where I guess I probably could have just gone to like BVI or something like that or Dubai and move things quicker. But um, yeah, I think if you're an institution, you can either wait. The best thing for you to do is probably buy. So there's a lot of different like mini banks, like an IFPay, and a lot of different financial institutions there. I would probably buy them before I'd enter the bureaucratic process of asking if what I'm doing is legal. That's probably the most sophisticated way. If you're a startup, be way ahead of the curve as far as
Mm-hmm.
where you're on the innovation cycle. So you can do it. There's no real hard cost in engaging the CNBV and these other ecosystems. There's just a wait. And so if you don't have 2 years to discover how to do things, then you're just not going to make it.
And when you said the thing about buying local partners, in a way, that's what a lot of people do in the U.S. when it comes to buying banks that are stablecoin friendly. So, who are some of these key figures that in Mexico that are like uh, both at the sort of buyable phase and they're crypto savvy enough that they might actually cut costs for entry?
So in Mexico, there's this idea of an IFPay. It's like basically like a mini bank, but it gives you direct access to SPAY. So SPAY is this real time like PIX equivalent in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Now the application process to do this is kind of cheap. I think it's like 200K, but you're gonna wait 3 years to maybe longer. If you have
Mm-hmm.
there used to be 30, but now there's probably like 80. You could just probably buy one for 10 million bucks. So if you're like MasterCard, when they entered, they bought Arcos, which was the SIFPay. So I mean, if your cost of operations is probably higher than 10 million bucks, the opportunity is higher. I would just buy an IFPay. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
would do it.
That's useful.
Yeah.
And you said you have some partners that you're going to be having some news with over the next 6 months. I didn't quite catch whether that was intra Mexico or global. Tell some
More
about that. I like the idea of people connecting to people.
Yeah, so more globally, we have I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but do you know by any chance? Because I could probably just
I'd
talk
say,
about it now.
I'd say 3 weeks is a safe bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we fundamentally are the late stages of being able to issue stable bonds out of Kazakhstan, so to all of
Uh-huh.
Eurasia, and this will be more of an explicit ruling. So
Mm-hmm.
this is pretty awesome. So we're gonna, pr- in partnership with, I don't know if I have a big institution there that has Eurasian reach, will issue probably 50 different countries in the Eurasian market. We are continuing our progress with Shinhan, which is one of the biggest Korean banks, and we'll expand our assets around the rest of Asia with them. And with our current partners, we're going to open up at the end of this year. So we're moving quick, we're moving
Yeah.
fast. And our idea is to be the last mile for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that we can push FX on chain and then give local blockchain users an ability to bridge to the blockchain without this FX fee involved.
Yeah. I when I lived in South Korea as a George Mason professor at our sister campus, I often used Shinhan Bank ATMs.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah,
And so is this again another a sort of a bond, the local short-term bond put on chain in a tractable way?
yeah. So we've already through them issued the KTV. It's the only interest bearing. I think it's like the only Korean, let's say, in the umbrella of stablecoins. This is an interest-bearing one. It's the only one that exists right now. There's two other non-yield bearing Korean stablecoins being issued that are growing up. But yeah, we issued the KTB. We're the only like tokenized treasury offering KTBs right now.
Yeah,
And so
congratulations on that. Yeah,
they,
seems like Korea is a place that's pretty crypto savvy. So
yeah, the retail is the government is really slow and
hmm
quite
oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. So the stablecoin law, and there's a lot of like, I don't know how much I want to talk about this because I don't want to offend or whatever, but it's a very complicated regulatory space and it's not moving as quick as it needs to. Retail there is insane. More people buy crypto than they buy stocks from a retail perspective
Hmm.
in Korea. So for us to have something there has been super beneficial, and we feel grateful. And I think the uniqueness of us, the fact that we are different and don't fall in like the stablecoin category in everyone's mind, is really what enabled us to build something.
And you've had partnerships with Solana. Or tell me in the audience a little bit about what it's like to work with that L2 and other L2s to basically make it easy for people to use these coins.
Yeah, so we currently issue on Base, Solana, Stellar, Monad, and Polygon.
Okay.
Um, and so anyone who goes to our site can issue and then bridge to any of those chains. Or most of those chains, secondary players have come and created liquidity for marketplaces there. So there's usually like a US to a Korean or something else that's not directly through us. Um, that's been interesting. It's, I think, the hardest problem in this space is to find a DeFi strategy and to create an organic reason for it. A lot of people talk about FX on chain right now. They haven't in the future. It, for the most part, doesn't exist. Like when people say they do crypto FX, they're only using crypto to move value around, and then they have, I'd say, retail books or desks in each space, and they have liquidity providers for those stablecoins. The FX isn't happening on chain. It just, from a user's perspective, feels like it. In our case, it is because we bridge those denominated assets of those currencies on chain, and those marketplaces operate independent of us.
Do you
Um,
mind giving us a sense of like what your fees look like for these FX exchanges, and what are sort of the, I don't know, two or three big markets that you're handling? I assume USD to Mexican peso is one of them.
yeah, the absolute biggest is USD to Mexican pesos. We have BRL to MXN as well. But just to give you some insight, for a stablecoin issuer, like 100 bips is a good FX fee.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you go to, like, I'd say a big vendor, 60 bips is kind of what you're
Yeah.
looking at. Our top
Okay.
rate is 20 bips. So that's
Okay.
like no volume, any trade size. You can move from USD to MXN for 20 bips or back. If you provide volume, once the volume kicks in, it gets even lower, down to five bips.
Okay.
So
That's better than many people are getting around the world. Okay, that's worth thinking
it,
about.
yeah,
20 bips
it's
for
not only a
USD to
little bit
MXN.
better.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's 3x better, right? It's
Yes,
3x,
yes.
5x better. Let me be clear about that. That is a lot
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
and so think about your average like Western Union user,
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
like that's 20 bips for them. If you're
Mm-hmm.
bringing volume, you're getting crazy rates too. So we
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of people onboarding who are like wallet providers,
Mm-hmm.
and they get a what do you say, collectively bargain their volume, and so
Yeah, sure.
they share those fees with their users too.
Oh, that's great. Okay. This is the part of the promise of DeFi actually happening in real time, it sounds like. Yeah.
And it's very hard. I don't see many people making it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason we
Yeah.
can do it is because we have an asset that can map directly to fiat for free.
Mm-hmm.
Once, like everywhere else, there's kind of some FX involved, and that's just a killer, a BIP killer, I guess is what I'm saying, a trade killer. So um, we're excited by it. It was a Herculean effort of both design and figuring out the problem, and also partnerships through these DeFi. Like Stellar and Solana have been great partners to us. Everyone wants to see this work. It's just, it's possible it's too early, and that's why it hasn't already worked yet. But I don't think so. I think the timing's right. So it's taken a lot of people involved to get it moving. But yeah, if you want the absolute cheapest rates, you can do it through us.
So yeah, so DeFi is achieving its promise. This is something. And how much of these of your assets are being traded in much more centralized networks at a place like Coinbase, something like that, where it doesn't, where to a normal user it might feel like DeFi, but it really isn't.
Almost none. I know that Coinbase has this thing where they list DeFi, like Base, anything on Base, and it's there. I don't think we have a lot there. We
Okay.
don't really like, I mean, centralized exchange, I don't want to make enemies, but I think they're kind of just like a scam, to be honest. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
centralized exchanges revenue model is to go to issuers and say, hey, give me $50,000 and we'll list it, So we've ignored it and avoided it. We just didn't
Hmm.
think it was any added value. So almost none. We do have some good partnerships coming out in Latin America, though, who
Great.
are centralized exchanges. That'll come out. I can't announce them yet, but that'll come out probably in the next 2 months. We see promise with them because they do remittances. They have real use cases, and so I'm hopeful for those. You
Yeah.
could
So,
guess who they are. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So people routinely think of remittances like people on the retail side of crypto think about remittances as the big use for cross-border blockchain. People who are been in the space for a while talk about B2B as perhaps the reason for FX on the blockchain. What are you seeing? What do you think? What is your business model? Which fork in the road do you pick as your business model, and what do you think it more generally will happen?
So we think that everyone thinking about this problem is viewing it incorrectly. And
Hmm.
let me explain. I view that crypto has delevered the source node's leverage over the destinations node leverage of remittance payments. And let me
Hmm.
explain. Generally, in the past, if you wanted to send money from the US to Mexico, the entry point was in the US. And so they were the gatekeepers of distribution. And a smaller model of this is like when you go into an airport, the FX desk there is more expensive than one if you go in the city and exchange because they are the distribution center. So they charge
Hmm.
fees proportional to their ability to get people, right? Even though the FX cost is the same everywhere, the being the distribution center is you hold a lot of leverage over people. So in the past, all those funds came from the US, and this could be extrapolated anywhere. So the US controls how remittances work. For example, banks in Mexico, they have to comply with all sorts of things that the US bank determines they need to comply with in order to get their business, right? Well, crypto has taken that away from them because now when people send money to Mexico, they don't go into a MoneyGram in the US. They send USDC to Mexico. And now those people are taking USDC in Mexico to engage in FX. Did I say, are you following me so
I
far?
get it
Like,
because so
okay,
basically the fact that the transaction, the foreign exchange transaction, is happening both physically and more importantly, sort of culturally inside a Mexican form of the blockchain. It
yes,
cuts down transaction costs. U.S. gatekeepers, U.S. regulators aren't allowed to impose a whole bunch of rules about what can and can't be done. So that just
exactly.
brings transaction costs down naturally, in your
And
view.
And even to go further, the people with the power now are in the destination. So they're going to
Hmm.
pick and do things that benefit them more appropriately. So the rest of the world is building what I think is a new version of Swift on stablecoins, where we see a future where people are going to say, I am the distribution node center. I'm not going to do it like that. So we have more leverage. So we think the return to the median, what do you say that? Revert to the means will happen where right now it's 99.5% USDC, but that will change and revert to something we more see and probably like in the traditional world today where let's say most of FX is 70% dollar, 30% non-dollar, and then most of transactions are half and half. I think we'll actually exceed that with crypto now because the people with the distribution power are going to make choices better for them. So that's the whole philosophy of we need to provide a product that lets them make better choices for themselves. And so our CETES product is that where this benefits them, it benefits their community. It's a tool that eliminates FX for them. So when these people start to engage in FX, they will go through our pathways. And So that was a long description. I honestly forgot the original question, but that's the thesis behind everything we do is let's go where people aren't, build a product beneficial for them, and we think the rest will work its way out. And so and through that, we truly push FX on chain and create a model that allows the yield to subsidize the spread and create better spreads for the destination node and people there.
So part of your story is that uh, there's a gatekeeping monopoly right now that exists, and it's basically elite country gatekeeping. And but since people like thinking, people in Mexico naturally think in pesos, people in Korea and South Korea naturally think in won. They would they're very open to switching to a system that lets them do that on chain. It's just that nobody has done this.
Yes.
That's part of your story. And so,
Yeah.
like, if you can provide those transaction services in the currency they like, they'll switch to it, and that weakens the gatekeeper's power along the way.
It, Absolutely. Yeah. And if anything, if they can say, I'm not paying these fees, you are, they will. So if right now they're holding USDT, they're paying the fee to move it to pesos. In the
Mm-hmm.
future, we think they'll say, give me Etherfuse CETES. And so that
Mm-hmm.
pushes the FX on chain and that makes the sender pay that fee.
Mm-hmm. So you've had to think, I assume, a lot about the safety of Mexican bonds in the last few years. The standard rating agencies, they say that Mexico's sovereign bonds are rated at about the safety level of India's, maybe Italy's. Does that seem about right to you? Is Mexico wildly safer or wildly less safe than the rating agencies say in your view?
Yeah, let's be clear. Safety in terms of investment. Mexican CETES is an investment grade. Uh, yeah, totally safe, an awesome product. I mean, even like we deal with crazy assets, right? So like Brazil is like double B, it's not even investment grade, and different countries like I don't know, Kazakhstan and things like that. So Mexico is a truly trustworthy product. In fact, a lot of the things that go into an investment are things like an investment grade. They're things like bureaucracy or what do you call it, like crime index. Mexico totally takes a hit there because there's a lot of like organized crime and things like that. But that doesn't necessarily affect the actual safety of their assets. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's totally undersold. I think it's such a safe bet. It's outperformed U.S. Treasuries over the past 20 years, given any sort of like um, strategic converting to dollar moment. So the whole point of emerging markets is to give you reasons to hold them instead of dollar. And so yeah. Anyways, yeah. So they are totally investment grade, a great product, and a great return on your dollars.
I think that's just a good advertisement. I have a hunch that Americans are instinctively too pessimistic about
Yes.
Mexico, their near neighbor, without realizing just like Mexico has its problems. A lot of countries do, but Mexico's richer than the global median. Has had a reasonably low inflation rate for decades now. One that at times has been lower than America's in the last few years.
Yeah.
Just something people don't appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, room to grow. I mean,
yeah,
Mexico,
okay.
we're moving away from India. We're moving away from China as far as the U.S. focusing on manufacturing. And Mexico's kind of the only other option. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of flows from China are going into Mexico to build up infrastructure there. A lot of flows are going from India to build up infrastructure there. So there's a lot of room for it to improve. Man, if they fix their crime problem, they would be a top five country. Like and I think this is speculation, right, at this moment. So no sophisticated analysis from me, but I think they're going to have to. And so I'm very bullish on Mexico.
One hopes, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so my guess is on some level, when you're thinking about countries to move into, you have to think about scale. You have to think about countries that have reasonably high population. So there's a
Yes.
decent sized internal market. And you want some level of prosperity, some level of financial sophistication. And then you're sort of torn on this question of whether like sometimes your regulators aren't really friendly, but the masses are. That sounds
Yes.
like that's the case, and certainly in South Korea's that, and maybe Mexico's that as well. What are sort of your dream countries to enter into over the next 5 years, based on that kind of thinking?
So the way we would think about dream countries is like, I mean, I have this list, right? And we'll probably hit them all this year, but they're countries with highest remittance flows. So this is like a utility or a reason to be there. Um, with a yield that compensates you for the inflation of their product proportionally, and like a high engaged user base. And then the others would be like the security of your assets. So, like, is the treasury product trustworthy? Now, even if it's not completely trustworthy or investment grade, but there's other factors will create it. Like Nigeria is one we're entering into, where I think their treasuries are like C level, so
Hmm.
not a lot of trust there.
But a
But
huge
there's a
population, big overseas community.
yes,
Yeah.
and the yield that they offer does get very close to compensating you for the risk you're taking, and so we view that we can issue a product there that's quite successful. Will we hold a lot of TVL? Probably not, but we will facilitate enough on-chain FX marketplaces to facilitate the money moving back and forth, and it'll be a better spread because we're subsidizing that spread with the yield of those markets.
Now we started off very quickly covering the fact that your products are well thought of as RWAs, and you're hoping for you talked about API access. I want to give you a chance to go a little deeper in the weeds here. Are you talking about situations where a retail customer can take their own treasuries and put them on chain? Um, like they're literally using the equivalent of a U.S. Treasury QSIP number and taking that on chain. Is that really what you're talking about at that level, or is there something where you're prepackaging the product and then they can handle that, where they can check the paperwork underneath and see what's there?
So, I mean, I'll be careful with what I say here,
Yeah, sure.
but if you are a global company, there's an absolute cost to you to having pre-funded accounts of significant depth in each of your countries, and to have that exposure. We give you the same utility from a centralized location that can off ramp locally immediately.
Hmm.
So I don't think that there's in the future, we're going to have a lot of like global companies with big footprints in all these countries because we've made the barrier for you to get the utility of having those funds in that country zero. So I think we're going to see crypto countries where global entities realize holding our treasury through that country of global treasuries around the world is a better use case than setting up a footprint in those countries and holding treasuries. Oh, does this make sense? So,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
So basically,
The,
you're. It's another case where you're paying the fixed cost so somebody else doesn't have to.
yes. Oh, I mean, we save you so much money. It's insane. To do it this way, and for better or worse, I think this is the future. The incentives are there, and I think it will benefit these countries too. Even though they may not see it at first, I think these countries will sell a lot of their debt in a safe way globally that they weren't selling before to be used in operations of companies.
Okay, this is really interesting now. So you're saying, so before I was thinking, okay, this is about remittances and people wanting to move their money around, and now I'm thinking, okay, this is a retail investment, a retail investment product, or at
So,
least it's an input to a future retail investment product of, say, um, a true locally denominated sovereign bond fund that's basically an index fund that holds 5, 10, 15 foreign treasuries, and that there's some maybe at some point in the future automated software in the background that will convert this stuff to US dollars or whatever other currency I need instantly.
yeah, and to address your first point, we view this as a primitive to on-ramp countries. And so how do you use it? Yes, you use it for remittances, but we've unlocked bonds to be used for remittances.
Mm-hmm.
But how do people use bonds today? You could use ours in those ways more appropriately. We also reduce your exposure to countries where you probably don't want to have a lot of exposure for different reasons, and we kind of solve that for you. But we give you the utility of it, meaning, okay, it's like you're, I mean, right now there's this tax arbitrage through Ireland, right? So um,
Arbitrage through, yeah, you cut out briefly.
uh, right now every global company has a presence in Ireland
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because there's some tax arbitrage.
Yes, exactly.
There's going to be something exactly the same with crypto.
Hmm.
but it'll be different. Ireland doesn't have a clean crypto policy. So we built the primitives to enable you to do that.
I mean, economists are always puzzled that people hold so much of the equities of the country they live in. We call this the home bias puzzle. And obviously, the same thing's happening in the world of debt. That basically, when people hold bonds in their portfolio in their hypothetical 60-40, the 40% is going to be overwhelmingly domestic debt. And it looks like you're creating a product that'll help people diversify the bond side of their portfolio if they want to, and not being
Absolutely.
stuck just holding US dollar denominated versions of those debts.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think like once the world becomes a little more, I don't know, like here's a hypothesis. I may be wrong or right, but I'm thinking right. I think the dollar is being devalued right now on purpose to
Mm-hmm.
give the middle class a fighting chance. Okay. So whether you agree with me or not, a lot of people agree with me. Why would you hold treasuries in the dollar? Well, because it's hard to put it in something else. Well, we've made it easy. So as long as you know that there's some strategy to increase the middle class for the next year, put your debt somewhere safer, and we give you an easier way to do that. So, and now extrapolate to the rest of the world. Is there some high confidence that something's going to happen and I would rather have my money in somewhere else? Or is there a liquidity event with USDC that's unfavorable? Where do I put it? Do I put it in crypto or do I put it in another debt product that is going to be more safe? So we just think that the world should participate, and there's a lot of reasons why, but there's no real medium to enable the rest of the world to participate. And so by doing this, we give you the ability to make your own choices.
Yeah, this lets me circle back to something we said at the beginning, which was I was asking about how the Mexican regulators saw how they treated you during the process. Another version of that is, what did the Mexican government think that this was a way to basically boost demand for Mexican debt? The way that it took American elites, American government elites, a year or two to figure out whether they thought that stable
Yeah.
coins were going to be good or bad news for the US dollar. And ultimately they realized, oh, this shores up demand for US dollar denominated debt, which we need. Um,
Yes.
and a version of this is what you're offering now to other countries. Um, has Mexico figured this out yet? At least the folks you were dealing with. B, how much a part of that is your part of your marketing strategy when you're walking to countries and saying, we want to make it easier for people to buy your debt?
Um, so here's the thing about regulators is no one's ever going to tell you plainly what they think or who so that's
Yeah,
the biggest
yep,
problem.
great.
But yes, we've had central banks come to us and say, we would like for you to do this here now. And so we're
Hmm.
evaluating this. Now, back
Congratulations,
then,
that's great. I know you can't say who they are, but thank you.
yeah,
That's good for the world, right?
it's crazy. I mean, when we first started, we trying to get a bank account was like a eight,
Hmm.
like a 8 month process because we get canceled. So this whole inversion of power, I guess, is kind of nice.
Hmm. Well, congratulations there.
I think my incentive is that my intuition is that Mexico does, but I don't know that they know it enough. So
Hmm.
right now, you hear a politician say, "We're going to tax remittances." They can do that today,
Hmm.
but if there's a Mexican product on chain, you literally cannot do that. There's no like way that you could do that because you have to tax all of crypto. So whether they recognize it or not, by having an asset that represents their sovereign debt on chain, we've increased their sovereignty
Hmm.
to be able to give them a way to participate on chain that doesn't have to go through some other currency. My intuition is that they do know, but they don't want to be responsible for saying one way or the other. That's why all of our interpretations are basically like, we don't think you should worry about being regulated through us, you know? So, and we kind of understand that now. So we move forward under that guise. But I did have the last time I was at an event in Mexico City, I had a lady who was going to be the head of another big institution of finance in Mexico. She came up to me, asked for a shirt for her and her kids, and she took a picture with me with her and her kids. And so they know us, and I think they like us,
Wow, great.
but I don't think they're ever going to say, good job, you can do this now in case it blows up. They want the ability to not have any um, accountability, if that makes sense.
All right. Well, I want to close by asking you about your sweatshirt. It's from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. What I presume were your classmates at MIT, what would they be saying about you, about what you've built at Etherfuse? And I want to ask the version of like, what did you learn at school that helped you, and what did you learn outside of school
Yeah.
that helped you to build this?
So my friends and family round was mostly people from class, and so I wouldn't exist if they didn't take the initial risk. I don't think what we learn at school directly is applicable here. In fact, I go once a year to electives, and I feel like, man, it's like learning about war and then being in the trenches. It's just a lot
Hmm.
different. But the one of the biggest insights I ever got was to look through things through different lenses at school. And that has helped me navigate regulatory pathways quite a bit, which is like saying, like, what do they want? Why are they not? So we've been very successful, I think, because we're culturally savvy and we're able to view things from the position of them. And that helps us strategize a pathway to a yes by navigating those things. Before I went, I'm a computer scientist by heart, I
Hmm.
went to MBA school. I actually learned a lot through that way, through that program is by to say, like, here's an organization. How is everyone thinking? Okay, behave appropriately. That was probably my most effective class.
That's great to know.
Yeah.
So basically, learning to read the room on a deep level.
Yeah, yeah, and like on a super third or fourth, fifth order effect. I just never thought about things that way before. As an engineer, you're kind of like, this doesn't work. You're dumb. And it was a really good insight there. So
All right. Well, any last words about what you're up to in the next few months that we haven't gotten to cover?
I think you'll see a bunch of assets coming out. I think you'll see a lot of remittance flows coming out. I think you'll see a lot of partnerships with big companies who will surprise you. So keep a lookout.
Fantastic.
I think if you're building, let's just say Mexico as an example, if you would want access into Mexico, I think we're the cheapest, most effective way there. And so reach out to me and let me show you how.
Great, great. And feel free to keep us informed on social media. So we like to let people know what people in the blockchain, especially stablecoin adjacent fields, are up to. So
Maybe one more last thing. There
sure.
needs to be, so in a world of dollar denominated assets and a world of Western thinking, especially with our rating, we did a rating with Bluechip. There needs to be, uh, yeah, yeah. I think we were probably one of the most unique rating processes because
Hmm.
there's probably a standard, right? Where it's like you have this island regulatory ability. It's like BVI has this stamp of approval process. Well, the rest of the world isn't, especially big economies, they're not going to, I call them gray areas. They're not going to create gray area laws because they don't have a lot of accountability, like, whatever. So there needs to be a lot of patience and I think detail when doing these types of ratings and reading them because it's just a different thing. You know what I'm saying? Like bankruptcy remoteness in Mexico is going to be different than bankruptcy remoteness
Absolutely.
in the UK. And
Yeah.
so um, I don't know. That's kind of what I want to say is we talk about this a lot, but we are definitely the most safe, sophisticated product to be issued out of Mexico. How that compares to a norm in Dubai is going to be way different. And so I'd love to walk you guys through that.
Yeah, we'd love that. Feel free to reach out to us again. As of today, the one coin that you have rated with Bluechip is given the same rating as USDC right now, both a B
Cool.
plus, which is a
Yeah.
very solid rating. It's many people online treat that as basically the "would I let my grandmother use it" rating,
Yeah.
and I think that's a very fair way to judge it. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah. It also matches what I'd say is the underlying assets rating, which is what our
Hmm.
goal is like,
Hmm.
can we make you as comfortable as buying the real asset? So
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. So, well,
cool.
it's been a pleasure to talk with you today. I know my team has had a great experience working with your team on the ratings process at Bluechip, and best of luck with your future releases and your future news.
Thank you. All right, Garrett. Thanks for the time.
Thanks.